Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam Channel, where I talk about anything that is not new music. So sometimes I talk about TV, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today with the Maya Rudolph vehicle Loot on Apple TV Plus, or Apple Plus TV, whatever the streaming Apple thing is. And I'm here to tell you that it is a poison pill. It appears to be a feel-good story about a divorcee, but it is actually billionaire propaganda and hyper-capitalist garbage. Now, quick caveat, I do consider myself a capitalist, but I'm not one of those capitalists that wants more socialism in his capitalism. Does that make sense? I don't believe in this great wealth gap. I don't believe in this insane spiraling. And maybe we'll get into a whole debate here because maybe this is the logical end of the capitalist system and it has to implode on itself the same way that communism did. I don't know. We'll see. But the point is, I'm not against all things that are capitalist or pro-capitalist, but this show, knowingly or unknowingly, emphasizes and relishes in the worst parts of capitalist excess. Now, before I get into this specific show, I think it's interesting to compare it to another Apple Plus, Apple TV Plus, Apple Plus TV show, sitcom, Ted Lasso, which these are very similar shows. We have a good-natured, wonderful actor who became famous through Saturday Night Live, who stars, I pronounce that like a Bostonian, Saturday Night Live, who became famous on Saturday Night Live, who lives in a fantasy world where something about the streaming format and the production quality fools the viewer into thinking they're seeing something that isn't kind of garbage, where the characters aren't basically all one note, where the plots aren't predictable, where it isn't just basically a normal sitcom that could have been on TGIF on ABC in the 90s, all set to the soundtrack of Mumford & Sons, or something like it, or it's TV that feels like Mumford & Sons, overwhelmingly good with just way too many positive people, no negativity, no naivete, just all these beautifully naive people who just want good in the world and just exist to spread joy. Reminders that feel-good stories are not always good stories. Interestingly, there's a character in Ted Lasso which feels to be the predecessor to the main character in Loot. That is the owner of the team, the hyper-wealthy, bitter divorcee. Now that sort of blonde divorcee character has seen some development in the show as she gets more and more friendly, but she embodies this idea of the good, very rich person. The very rich person who earned all their wealth through marriage and doesn't really know what to do with it, but is just a good person. And that's the basis. That's where we start with the show Loot, which, if you haven't seen it, it's basically a fantasy about what happened after the Bezoses got divorced. So Adam Scott, who is in every TV show ever, Adam Scott, who is like the Kevin Hart of TV, it plays this multi-billionaire tech inventor guy, and Maya Rudolph plays his wife. And the show begins, and we're introduced to their life with just full-time servants everywhere, everything they could possibly want. And then, of course, he's cheating on her with Xanthippe from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And that's where the show begins, where we have this woman who has $87 billion going through a divorce. Now, I will say, as an observer of human life, the depiction of divorce, the feelings that go into that kind of human relationship, is quite good. And let me make one more thing clear. I've watched every episode of this show, and I'm waiting for the next episode to come out. I am going to keep watching this show because Maya Rudolph is that good, and it's that engaging. Okay? So I'm not saying this is a bad show, but it has this really bizarre conceit where she gets divorced, she has $87 billion, and she learns that one of the tax-dodging charities that was set up by her husband now belongs to her. So, these kinds of charities where you save more money by giving away money than you would by giving away taxes, where you do the absolute minimum to help with all that you've been given. You've been given so much more than anyone should ever get in the history of humanity. But you have a charity, a private charity. And so she comes in and she starts working at the charity. Oh, it's so nice. She just becomes friends with everybody there. One of the great myths is that you can have a bunch of people who are making in between $30,000 to $60,000 a year working at a company with someone who has $87 billion, and they can have any kind of real human relationship that isn't somehow predatory or transactional, because that kind of money doesn't just completely mess up all human relations. We can just pretend like that. You can just pretend that at your office or where you work, somebody who has $87 billion just comes to work next to you, and they're just another person. That's one of the conceits. The main problem, though, is the power imbalance that's in the show. So there's this main character who is the divorcee. The secondary character is the person who runs the charity, the person who went through college, put herself through college, struggled with homelessness herself, and now is at the head of this foundation that is seeking to help all of the homelessness, all the unhousedness in Southern California, especially in Los Angeles. So here she is working super hard, and she does not welcome the presence of this billionaire. This totally aloof billionaire who has no idea what people are doing, no idea of what they struggle with, no idea of what work is, and it's all played for laughs. Now, the reason that the show is so insidious is because initially there's resistance, and you see that Maya Rudolph's character, the billionaire, is not helping. But she can't be fired. She owns the place. There's a whole scene where you see the person who runs the charity say to her, "You can stay." And then Maya Rudolph says, "But you couldn't do anything to stop me, right?" And she says, "Yeah, that's right." This isn't a hero. This isn't a philanthropist. This is Homelander. If you've watched The Boys, Homelander is their real-life version of Superman, who is a terrible murderer who abuses his power. He can just wish you off into the cornfield anytime he wants because he has all the power. And everybody who he's talking to has none of the power. That's the situation here, where this bored multi-billionaire is looking for meaning. And so she goes and interferes in this meaningful charity. Now, of course, what ends up happening is she's actually pretty good at it, because she exists. Because there are these billionaires who actually do the work to help people. You know all of them. You go ahead and you name all of them that are doing all this. They would go into an office from 9 to 5. It's a complete fantasy in every possible way. And it really emphasizes this idea, this myth, that it's good that there are people who have this much money. Because, what is Bezos's ex-wife up to? I don't know. She might be a good person. She might not be. But this whole show is so insistent on showing that not only is she good, not only is Maya Rudolph's character good, she is necessary. Because all of the plans that need to go through are saved by her celebrity. There's a scene in front of the state board, in front of the town board, whatever it is, the bureaucratic instrument that determines whether or not to build another housing area. And they only pass because of the influence of the good billionaire. So what's the real message of this? Public services are useless. Why have welfare? Why have state-funded... Why should taxpayers have to pay to help the homeless? That's the moral of the show, because we don't need to. Because Maya Rudolph's multi-billionaire is going to show up and give all the money. She gives all this money to all these charities, and they're so happy, and they're dancing, all these little private charities. We don't know what they believe. We don't know what they stand for. They might be weird, anti-choice. They might be weird religious. They might be satanic. They might be whatever. We don't know what they are. They're all private charities. They're all private charities that are getting the money and being saved by this good billionaire. The moral of the story is billionaires are good, public services are bad. The private sector will even things out. And the jokes, the number of jokes about how rich this woman is, about how everything she does, and like everything, she gets helicopters for her coworkers when they need it. Isn't that cute? Wouldn't it be so funny having a billionaire working with you? Wouldn't that be so fun? Wealth doesn't poison relationships. It doesn't poison her. She is just an innocent, wonderful person seeking to make the world a better place. There's an entire story about how, oops, in the divorce, she got a whole bunch of holding companies. And those holding companies own a bunch of companies. And she doesn't even know what she owns. Isn't that quirky? Isn't that quirky that this multi-billionaire owns these amusement parks in the Philippines and that there's a disaster on one of the roller coasters and it appears as though people are going to die, and the reason this is happening is because the roller coasters, the amusement park company doesn't work hard enough because everything's with bribes, and this company where this woman is making most of the money from through her holding companies, she is profiting from the negligence of the people who run the amusement park. Isn't that a funny setup for a gag? Isn't that funny that like you can own stuff that you don't even know? You can make money off of other people suffering, and then she sees it on TV and goes, "Oh, are those people okay? Oh, they're okay. So that's good. They're fine. They didn't die." And the joke is she goes, "Oh, I should sell that company." Isn't that hilarious? Isn't it so hilarious to think about how much people own, that they own so much that they don't even know what they own? Isn't this a good system? And then she gets this award as being like a great philanthropist, and we meet all these other billionaires who are all good people as well. Oh, here's a billionaire of a vodka fortune. Oh, he's a nice, charming guy. Here's a billionaire tech person. Oh, he's a good guy. Everybody's just a good guy. They're all just good. They're all just working hard. I'd like to just take one more second here as a language professor and tell you, Bill Gates is not a philanthropist. Carnegie was not a philanthropist. Philanthropist is the opposite of misanthrope, okay? Anthro, right, means human being. A misanthropist means somebody who hates people. So the opposite of a misanthrope is a philanthrope, somebody who loves people. Why have we allowed the scum-sucking billionaires who are drowning everybody with their wealth gap and with their privilege, why do we allow them to give 0.1% of what they have and allow themselves to say that they love humanity? Maya Rudolph's character does not love humanity. She loves herself and the ego boost she gets from helping people in a way that she won't even feel. Philanthropist. So if you love humanity, you're a philanthropist. I would go forth and say socialists are the real philanthropists. You know? And again, I don't consider myself a socialist, so you can be pissed at me. Everyone can be pissed at me for me saying that, but it's true. Philanthropist. I gave $1 million. Oh, did you? That's great. All right. Anyways, there's my thoughts on the show, Loot. I'm going to keep watching. Maya Rudolph's great. When I lived in Santa Barbara, she lived there too. And my then wife worked for a charity, and she helped out that charity. So on all accounts, she's a very good person. Very kind and friendly and giving. But what she's selling is horseshit. There's the camera.